Hello. In this episode, I am answering some burning questions that some of you submitted on Instagram. We're going to discuss business and babies, why I think some coaches didn't survive this past year, the importance of releasing toxic people from your life, and what I consider to be the number one catalyst for my business growth. Let's go. Welcome to All In with Allie, the podcast for online business owners and entrepreneurs who are ready to create the life and business of their dreams. I'm so happy you're here. I'm cold. I am so cold. It is, this past weekend we got snow in Middle Tennessee. We usually get 1 to 2 decent snows a year, and we just got our first, and it was so cute, but it is so damn cold. And I'm going to be honest with you. You know how a few weeks ago when it was still warm, I was like, Boston, how bad can the cold weather be? I can admit when I'm wrong and I'm feeling the weather, which isn't even, comparatively speaking, we're, I think in the 30s. It's not that crazy, but it's so cold. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't wondering where my mind's at with the Boston thing, because the cool thing about Middle Tennessee is I know that we have a month or two, probably about 2 months, and the worst of it's over, right? Probably like a month and a half, it starts to tick back up, and spring is right around the corner, But Boston... And I know people up there, they're like, it's worth it. It's not that bad. And I can imagine, the good outweighs the bad in a lot of different ways. But man, I am freezing right now. So there's that. All right. This is going to be a really good episode. I got some awesome questions submitted. I'm really happy with these. What I did, this is going to be a 2-parter, because what was interesting was half of the questions that I got were related to attracting your ideal client or client issues. So next week, we're going to have an episode solely dedicated to the ideal client conversation, which is going to be great. So what I did with these is these are a bit more random, but they're really juicy, as you heard from the intro. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Okay, so the first question that I got was, did I always know that I wanted kids / did I know that I could do business and be a mom? And the answer is no. I did not always know that I wanted to have kids. So I grew up, I have a lot of siblings. I have 8 siblings. I come from a split home with step brothers and sisters and mostly half brothers and sisters. I have a full biological sister, but she passed away at the age of 9 in a car accident, and I was 11. So everybody else is like step or half, which means nothing, but I'm just giving some context. So anyway, when my parents got a divorce and they both remarried, they both started having babies with their new spouse, and there literally was a new baby every year for 5 years. And they went back and forth. So like my mom had my brother Patrick, and then my dad and stepmom had my brother Jacob, and then my mom and stepdad had Indy, and then my dad, and they just like went back and forth. So, and I'm about 10 years older than these younger kids, 9 or 10, and then, it goes up from there. So as I was a preteen, I was all of a sudden there was like all of these babies at both homes. Like no matter where I went, there were babies. And guess who was on baby duty? Me, which is fine, right? I'm the big sister, and that was totally fine. But I will say at my mom's house, it was a little much. Like there were, full summers where like I was in charge of the kids while my mom was at work and my stepdad was like between jobs and, sometimes at work, sometimes not. Either way, like I had the kids. And that was a lot. Let's say like I was 12 or 13 years old and I was responsible of these toddlers like all day long, all summer long. So all of that to say, there was a really long time I was like, I'm not having kids. I was so over it. I was so traumatized from the situation and just like burnt out. But then, I got out of the house. Like as soon as I turned 18, I left. And as I got more into my 20s, the maternal pull started pulling at me, which that doesn't happen for everybody, nor does it have to, but it did for me. And I quickly it wasn't quick, but like over time, kind of forgot what it was like. And I was like, yeah, I could totally do this. And I'm really, really glad that I did. I think it's really cool that women, I don't know, maybe I just hear more women talk about it now than maybe they did before, but I hear a lot more women talk about how they don't want kids and how they're open about that. And they get to a point where they feel really confident about it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Obviously, you're not here to have babies, or like that's not what we need to do anymore. So that's within your rights to decide. I just decided that I wanted babies, and it was the best decision I ever made because while being a mom is so difficult in so many different ways, it is the most rewarding and the most special, and to see life through the eyes of a precious child is the gift that I could have never anticipated. It is the coolest thing in the world. And I learned so much from these boys. Like I swear they teach me more than I teach them. And it's a very rewarding gift. So I say like, whatever you want to do, let that be. And if you change your mind later, great. And the cool thing is we have so many options to where we don't have like this hardcore biological clock that starts ticking once you turn 30 anymore. Like we have with technology and science, we've bought ourselves so much time, which is amazing. So do you. And in terms of, did I know that I could do business and be a mom? I did not. I started my first business, the one where I was managing social media for other businesses. I started that before I had Cruz. I knew I wanted to be a mom, so I figured like at some point I would have to figure that out. But when I had Cruz, that's when I had started this business, the one that I have right now. And I had no clue what I was doing. And yeah, I've shared a lot before, but at the time we had very different situation. Chris was in a very different job, multiple jobs ago. I just started this one and hadn't made $1 in it, nor did I really know how to make $1 in it yet. So we didn't have help. Chris was commuting into Nashville. So as I brought this business that I have right now that's generated millions of dollars since, as I was bringing it up and getting it off of the ground, I was fully balancing business and motherhood. And I say balance very loosely, right? Like I had a 90-minute window twice a day during the week. And then I would work early in the morning before he woke up, those nap time stretches during the day. And then when Chris got home, I would work in the evenings as well. And that's how I brought this to life. And it was a challenging time, but would I go back and do it again? I absolutely would, because here we are. So I'm happy that I did that. And I didn't know that I could do it, but luckily there were so many women that came before me that did both. And, nobody tried to sell it as like this sunshiny rainbow situation. Whether you're doing business with babies or not, like there's always going to be challenges, but especially when you're navigating, holding a baby on your hip too, it comes with its own special challenges, but I saw other women could do it. And I've just always been the type of person where I'm like, okay, if she can do it, so can I. And I would hope that you can see me doing it and it gives you faith that you can too, because you absolutely can. Even if you can't afford all the nannies like we have right now, like you'll get there, right? I didn't get to where I got to where I am today, one baby step at a time, and those baby steps add up. Thank God. So there you go. Okay. What are my thoughts on why some coaches didn't survive these quote unquote hard times? She put little stars around some. I don't know if she's talking about somebody specifically, or if she thinks that maybe I know who she's talking about. I have no idea. And I can't think of anybody specifically. I know a few people who I know a few people who now are doing different things, who were coaches and now maybe have a different job that's not online, that's not coaching anymore, which is totally fine. But my thoughts on why some coaches didn't survive the hard times. So hard times are called hard times for a reason. And I've been in this specific business since 2018. So what is that? 7 years. And in those 7 years, I have experienced many, many windows of that I would consider difficult, that I would consider hard times. That, it's definitely a couple of times where I did 100% wonder if I was going to be able to stay in the game. 100%. So hard times come and go. And I would say that, like, to anybody who feels as if they're in a hard time right now, they come and go, right? So it's never always going to be hard as long as you know how to manage it and you doing things that are actually moving the needle and you don't self-sabotage. It's only a matter of time before the tides change, and they always change both ways, hard and easy, easy and hard. So I just want to say that, there's no shade or anything for how I'm going to answer this question. And I think when it comes to why I think this happens, I think it's 3 different things. I think number 1, not everybody wants to stay in this space, right? I think with 2020, obviously we saw a huge influx of people who were kind of forced, in a sense, to try out online business, because what else were they going to do, right? And I think that that's great. So there's a big amount of people, a huge influx. Either they had to, or they saw other people doing it and they're like, oh, how hard can it be, right? Not really realizing that whether you're growing a business online or a brick and mortar, a business is still a business, and it's going to come with its own share of challenges. So I think some of those people, no doubt, got into the online space and just realized that they didn't want it that bad. They just didn't, right? Or they didn't want it that bad, or they just didn't enjoy it. And what I've learned about entrepreneurship is there's pros and cons, and there's pros and cons to having a traditional, conventional job as well. So the pros of being an entrepreneur and having the type of business like I have, or maybe you might be building, is there's no cap to what we can create. There's no ceiling at all. The limit does not exist in terms of the type of offers that you can create and the type of revenue and the type of impact. No limit exists. That is sexy. We love that. The con to that is we don't know when things are going to start working for you. It's unpredictable, right? So like, you don't know when that first client's going to come. You don't know when the first 10K, 20K, 50K, whatever month is going to come. It depends on so many different factors. So the limit does not exist. And also it is highly unpredictable and not stable at all. You can get a business to where there's more stability, which is the goal. But overall, and this is true in a lot of businesses, there's a lot of instability as well. However, when you are an employee and you have a more conventional job, you have a bit more stability. You know, for the most part, that you're going to get paid. You know how much you're going to get paid. You know what to expect. So you can predict those sort of things. You're not wondering, or hoping, I hope this client comes through. Like, you know, you're going to get paid. But the downside is there's a limit and a pretty stark contrast in terms of what you can earn versus what you can create on your own. But here's the thing. Some people are built for entrepreneurship who thrive with that kind of pressure and love the game of it, right? I always say, like, it takes kind of a sick son of a bitch to do what we do, especially in the beginning, because there's so much risk that you have to learn how to hold. I had to learn how to hold it. There were so many times where it would make me nearly physically sick because I didn't know. I didn't know when this thing was going to happen. I didn't know if this was going to happen or this. There's no way to know. So you have to learn how to hold that. And I think a lot of people, they come in thinking that they want this life and they realize, actually, I'm much happier with the predictability. I'm much happier with the stability. I'm much happier clocking in at this time, clocking out, and then being done. When you have a business, that's not always easy to do. I'm still working some weekends in my business. I want to. It brings me a lot of joy. And if we're going to be home and we're not really doing much, I'm going to be doing something in my business. But I still work a lot, but I love it. So again, I think like that's a big reason is people get in, they're like, it's not for me. And then they flow out and they go back to something else or something new, which is great. I think another thing is maybe they were actually put out of business, which happens a lot. I think some people don't have the opportunity or knowledge on how to stay in the game. There has been 2 periods in my business I've taken out business loans to stay in the game. That's how bad I want it. That's how bad, like, I believe in what I'm doing. And, it was a harder time. So that was the option. It was like, okay, we didn't really have the savings, or I didn't want to pull from personal stuff. So it's like, okay, I'm going to take out a business loan. I'm going to leverage some debt to stay in the game and to get to the other side. And that's exactly what I did. And that's the difference. Like, a few episodes ago, I was talking about like, I love debt. Debt's great. I don't have an issue with debt. And that's what I mean, because I understand the power of leveraging debt versus looking at debt through the lens of scarcity. I understand that if somebody gives me $50,000, that buys me a certain amount of time and I can double, triple, quadruple, 10x that in less time than it would take me to pay it back, versus not having that and continue to go without whatever that 50K I could leverage from it. So that's why I don't have an issue. It depends on the type of debt and my knowledge and belief on my power to leverage it. So I've done that a couple of times and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I've done that. And there are a lot of businesses that make this very easy. PayPal is fantastic in supporting entrepreneurs. Fantastic. They have, I think, 2 different types of loans that you can take out, and they will just take it from future sales. So I've taken out a PayPal. Actually, I think both times were PayPal loans. Yeah, both times were PayPal. I love PayPal. They were fantastic and they helped keep me in business. So I'm very grateful to PayPal. But anyway, my point is, some people, they may not have the credit to do that, or again, maybe not even the knowledge. So they unfortunately get taken out, and that sucks, but you can always find a way to come back. You can always come back. And then I think there's also a percentage of people that simply just didn't want it bad enough to ride it out, right? Like maybe they weren't necessarily going out of business. Maybe they could have taken out a loan or they could have done whatever, but they just didn't have it. They didn't want it that bad. And the way that I think about this is like have you ever been in a relationship, maybe when you were younger, where you liked the person, but it wasn't quite right? Maybe it was a toxic relationship. I think that's our next question is on toxic. Yeah. Okay, we're going to get to that in just a second. We'll talk about toxic relationships. I have a lot to say there. But maybe maybe it was a toxic relationship situation, or I don't know, who knows? Like who knows why you were in it? But like you kind of had one foot out. So as soon as something went wrong, right? As soon as you had an excuse, it was like, I'm over it. Like for whatever reason, instead of just leaving, you needed the excuse to do it. Or maybe you've been on the other side of that. Like I've been on the other side of that where, I don't know, I went out with girlfriends and didn't answer a text and all of a sudden like we're breaking up. And it's just like, are you looking for excuses to break up with me? It's so stupid. But that's it, right? It's like when you want something bad enough, you will fight for it. So when you get married, hopefully if you get married to somebody that you want to get married to and you genuinely love the person and you want to work it out, marriage is hard. I mean, Chris and I have been married 8 years. This 2024 was year 8. And that was our hardest year in marriage by far. Like 7, you know how everybody was like the 7-year itch. I was like, 8 rocked us. Not like too crazy, but more so than any other year. And we don't have that many. I mean, I'm not saying this to like brag or anything, but like it wasn't even over anything big. There were no like giant glaring issues. It was just like little dumb stuff. I don't know. Like, we don't have to get into that. But like my point is when you go through a rocky spot in your marriage, hopefully you're not like deuces, I'm out, right? Like when you're married and you're actually committed, and that's the difference, right? You don't have to be married to be committed to somebody, but that's the difference. It's that commitment. You're in or you're out. If you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you are out. Period. So like when you're in and a rough patch comes, which it will, you're going to figure it out. It may not be fun. You don't know how long it's going to last, but you're in it. There's no other option, right? You've burned the boats. So I think in business, and this is why this podcast is called All In with Allie. It's why I have All In the membership, because I've realized that when you have the attitude of all in, when you have the attitude of I've burned the other boats, that's it. Like we are here. There's no way out. You're going to make it work, right? So like in this business, that's always been my attitude. I'm here. I'm here. I'm going to evolve. I'm going to change. I'm going to, I may not look the same year after year, but I'm not going anywhere unless I want to, So like that, I think some people, they come into it and before they, like maybe they're in a focus of business that they're not fully passionate about, so they don't want to fully commit, right? Like I'm so obsessed with what I do. I want to be committed to this. So I think some people don't really find what that passion is, that angle that lights them up, or they don't understand the power of fully committing. There's some scarcity going on there. Thus, the second that the tide changes and the boat starts rocking, they're like, we got to get out of here. So I think that's a big part of why some people have left the online space as well. And then, we have 2 more questions actually. Cool. So the next question, I love this one because this isn't necessarily related to business, but actually it is indirectly, like majorly, if you have a business, and it relates to so many other areas of your life. But this question is, so she said, releasing toxic people / relationships from your life and why it's so important. I cannot tell you how this is the most important. The most. And unfortunately, some toxic people, some toxic relationships are easier to let go than others. I've had both situations where I've been in a toxic romantic relationship, and then I also have toxic relationships with family members. And I used to think the romantic one was the hard one, right? Like, oh, how do you get out of this? And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a whole other ballgame when the toxic relationship that you realize you're part of is with somebody that you are connected, like is your family member that you love, that you don't want to be disconnected from. That's really tough to have to create that boundary. So what I will say is this, again, some cases are easier said than done, but I'm going to give you like a couple of my own examples and just share like how I've navigated this. So like I said a second ago, I've talked about this a couple of times here and there, but before I met Chris, my husband, I was in what I would consider a narcissistic, toxic relationship for a few years. And it was always on and off. I mean, it was toxic with a capital T. And I love this guy. Like I wanted it to work so bad. And it was one of those situations, we were both young and you think that like people will change or whatever. So that is one of the reasons why I stayed in as long as I did. I think like one, it was a major self-worth situation for sure. And two, I was hopeful. I didn't want to leave. Like you're in that relationship for a reason. So ultimately, obviously, I ended up leaving simply because I just got fed up, right? It finally got to a point. I think everybody has their limit. Everybody. And that limit is different for different people. Unfortunately, I'm loyal to a fault and it's such a strength of mine. But in this case, it was a weakness because I definitely stayed in this situation far too long, like way, 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 way too long through too many things. But I stayed and I always came back until finally, I think it was a culmination of just like being so fed up and just like bored with the same over and over again. And then also my self-worth was increasing. I was working on myself and I was like, what is the deal? This is crazy. And also a big piece for me was I had this really big, man in the mirror moment where something really, really, really bad happened in this relationship, like really bad one night. It was a very dark night of the soul level, right? And I had this moment after where I realized I was repeating patterns that I had witnessed from my mom and my stepdad because they had a very toxic, abusive relationship. And I grew up in that household, right? And I always said, like, I will never do that. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be whatever. Until I was in that situation. And then I found myself putting up with that and literally going back. And the shame of that and also the sobering awareness of it. And I literally had, the movie It Ends With Us. I had my It Ends With Us moment. And I wasn't as strong as Lily. She made that decision very firm pretty early on, even with the kid, which is, I know it's a fictional story, but like, I'm sure people do that. For me, I had the awareness. I still stayed, but after having that awareness, I couldn't unsee it. I was like, whoa, I could very clearly see the fork in the road, right? Like if I keep going left, I'm on the same trajectory as my mom and the things that ruined my childhood in so many different ways and scarred me and traumatized me. Like I was on that same path and putting up with the same things, or I could take a right. And the right is scary because I don't know what's that direction. I have no idea, but that would require me radically changing and leaving behind this person who I thought I loved so much, right? So like I didn't make that decision instantly, but again, I couldn't unknow it. So eventually I just got to a point where I was like, we're done here. And then right after, and I mean right after, I met Chris, and I'm telling you, I know this was it was a test from the universe, because I met Chris and every other guy. I don't know why I'm giving all this information, but I feel like definitely the person listening probably would value this, and I'm sure some of you would, and probably relate to this too. But also in terms of like tests of the universe, I really believe this is how it works. So I met Chris, and I've shared before that, one, we talked back and forth for a while on Facebook for like 2.5, 3 months. And then he came and he took me on a date. And the first 2 dates were not that great. There wasn't like that spark, right? There wasn't like, I was super attracted to him. I thought he was so funny. He had his stuff, like he checked all the boxes. But like, and I don't know what this is, but I know like with a lot of toxic relationships, and you'll hear a lot of women talk about this, typically that connection is like, it's that chemical connection, right? Where it's like, whoa, fireworks, like you two were destined to come together, whether it was good or bad, It wasn't like that. So that confused me, because I was used to, and you always hear people say like, if you don't have, I had butterflies, like it wasn't that, okay? I wasn't saying like I wasn't feeling anything, but like the chemistry together was not what I expected. And, we did the first date. It was like, okay, maybe it was like first date jitters. Second date it went wrong in so many different ways, to the point that after the date, I bawled my eyes out because I thought I'd screwed it up. And I really liked him, but like something was off. And he and I agreed to give it one more shot, one more date. And if it sucked, we were going to part ways. Okay. And then third date was a charm. It was great. We clicked, but our relationship was a slow burn, like the epitome of a slow burn. But the reason why I bring that up, and here's the test part, is because prior to Chris coming into my life, I was in, again, this toxic relationship, and we'd be on and off. So I would try to date other guys, like with my whole heart and soul. All I wanted to do was just to move on. And like, unfortunately, I wasn't strong enough to be single and just like do it on my own. In my mind, I was like, I just need like a hotter guy, or like, like that was the method to my madness. So I would try to date other guys, great guys. But every time I would start dating this guy, and then the story, right? All of a sudden, like the second you let go and you get distracted doing something else, and you're not, you're not showing the toxic one the attention, what happens? They want you more than ever, right? So every time he'd come back around, and every single time I would go back, every time. So when I started dating Chris, now this was long distance, right? I couldn't just like throw myself into it. There was so much distance. There was so much time. But I made a promise to myself. I was like, I'm going to see this through. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to, like, I'm cutting off all ties. Because I just had this feeling that I would be rewarded for that, for whatever reason, because I'd made the mistake so many times, dozens of times prior, where I had gone back and basically gone back on what I said I wanted. I said I wanted a healthy relationship. I said that I was ready for this caliber of person to come into my life. But the second I had that opportunity, I squandered it, and I went back and accepted very, very poor toxic behavior. That's what I was doing. So I made the decision, okay, God, if you send me this guy, I will give it like the most sincere attempt, and I'll be so good. I'll be so good. So we went on a first date, and the very next day, block, delete, completely cut ties. Completely. And after that, you know the memes where like it shows the ex trying to like send money on Venmo because that's the only way that they can reach you? It was like that situation. And, you know, drive-bys, my apartment, like you name it, full court press. And I was steadfast. And it was hard. But I had the tiniest feeling of confidence and hope that I was doing the right thing. And here we are. 10 years later, we've been together for 10 years, married for 8. And he's, besides my kids, the next best thing that's ever happened to me. And I really believe this, that if I had gone back even one time, even if Chris didn't know that I had gone behind his back and entertained anything from that old relationship, I would have lost him. I think God would have been like, you guys are not a match. And it would have, somebody else would be married to him right now. And that breaks my heart. Just even saying that breaks my heart. So here's the last thing I'll say about toxic relationships. And you can't know this until you get out of it. But when you get in a healthy relationship, the really cool thing, even if you don't marry the person, okay? Like you may get in a healthy relationship and they're still not the one. Just because they're nice to you and just because they're a good person doesn't mean that you have to marry them. All right. So I just want to be clear on that. It just so happened that I wanted to marry Chris with my soul. So that worked out very nicely. But I will say this. If you're used to toxic and then you spend some time with somebody who treats you how you deserve to be treated and does what he says he will, he or she, you know, whatever the situation is, or you do that for yourself and you realize like, oh, I don't need a person. I can love myself. I can do whatever. What's really, really cool about that is the odds of you going back in that shark-infested water is so rare, like slim to none, because in the same way I couldn't unknow what I knew about like going down the wrong path, you can't unfeel what it feels like to be truly appreciated. And that contrast is so big. And also, you don't realize, or maybe you do, how much energy a toxic relationship takes from you. When I was in that relationship for years, it was all I could think about. All I could think about. It was, you know, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, everything in between. And it consumed every fiber of my being because, so many different things, but like the mind drama of it all, the narcissism of it all, the heartbreak of it all. If I was still in that relationship, which like, oh my God, I'd probably be dead, honestly. I probably would have just like leaped out of a window. And I don't say that lightly. It was so miserable, but like, I wouldn't have this business. You can't focus. You don't like it's gonna, if you want something and it's messed up in that way, it's going to take so much of your life force that you either realize it or you don't. But like, you know, having come out the other side and being in the type of relationship that I am now, which is so stable and we don't have trust issues and I don't have to worry about anything with him. I don't have to think about him, right? Like I get to be here and pour into you and do the things that I love and travel and live my life to the fullest in tandem with him because I'm not concerned about what he is or isn't doing. Right? So like that frees up, you don't even understand how much time and energy that frees up. So if you are trying to build anything of value while you are in a toxic relationship, 1, I am sending you all of the love in the world. 2, you're a rock star. 3, is it worth it? what would it look like if you weren't that consumed? Because I know you're consumed. I know you're consumed. I know you are. And it's bringing down your energy. It's bringing down your vibration. It's so sad. I watched my poor mom. I mean, her whole life was ruined in so many different ways because she married the man that she married and didn't have the courage, maybe the knowledge, or the desire in a lot of ways to leave. She loved the man, loved him, and he ruined her life. Truly ruined it. She was so smart, all the potential in the world, gorgeous, ruined, squandered. And it is the saddest thing. And again, I had that man in the mirror moment where I was like, is that what you want? And the answer was hell no. So it's something to think about and something to take very, very seriously, because that time flies and you cannot get it back. And I promise you, there is somebody out there, even if you need to be alone, which is probably the move. Honestly, like I kind of wish I had more time to be single, but Chris came in my life and it all happened perfect. But like, there is somebody out there who will do right by you and who deserves you and who will make you realize like what everybody else is talking about. Like there are so many people out there like that you will love so much and you will be so obsessed with and you will want to spend the rest of your life with and they will want it too. And it will be right and divine, but you cannot attract that person while having even just one foot in with the other person. It's going to be very hard to do. So, okay. Stepping off of the soap. Oh, well, I want to give the family example too, really quickly. So, unfortunately, there's a person in my family who I had to set strong boundaries with as well. And I haven't talked to in a really, really long time because it was toxic, because the person is in a bad place, I guess, and was very, very disrespectful to me and my family. And there was one time that I tried to be the bigger person and mend things, and the person doubled down for literally no reason. And I will take so much I will always take responsibility. And this is like, unfortunately, it's a mental health thing. And while I love this person from afar, and I know it's a mental health thing, I know that if this person were to get the help that they need, that would be different and they would be different. But that doesn't mean that I have to sit and soak in the toxicity. It's not going to happen. I did that my whole life with my stepfather, and I've served my time, right? Like when you go from chaos to normal, chaos to calm, you'll never go back to chaos again. You will, like, for me, it repels me so strongly. I have such an adverse reaction to it. So it sucks, right? Like I don't want, and this is somebody that, like a close family member that, again, I love dearly. I hate that this is the situation, but I'm not willing to put me or my family anywhere near anything like that. So that's a tough one, but you got to do what you got to do to protect your peace. Okay. Last question was, she said, loaded question. It's true. It's a very loaded question, but I love it. She said, what has been the number one catalyst to your growth? Easy. Now, there are a billion factors that's attributed to everything that I've done, everything that you've done. But as I was reflecting on this, the biggest thing that came to mind, and actually before this question was even submitted, this is something that I've been thinking on, hence my next training that I'm doing. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I'll talk more about it probably in the next episode. But the biggest, I would say the number one catalyst, if I had to rank them, the number one catalyst to my growth is identity work. Identity work. It's not strategy. It's not charging a certain amount or creating a type of offer. It's not investing in a particular anything. It is working on my own identity. And what I mean by that is my own confidence and who I not only want to be as a woman, as a human, as a mom, but definitely as a business owner, and who I am becoming. So in the past, and this is something like, it's not this linear thing, like different seasons are going to bring out different versions of all of us. Different days are going to bring out different versions of us. Let's be real. So this isn't something that's like, you fix it one time and you're good. It'll sneak up on you. And I'm constantly doing this work. This is like my number one focus, especially now, because at some point, you know a lot of the strategy, well, at least I've been doing this for so long. So I'm certainly not saying there's not more to learn. And I am still learning strategy for sure. But what I have found is it's this working on my identity and what I am going toward and who I am becoming that shifts everything in terms of then what I go on to do, the strategies that I follow, what I invest in, the type of offers that I put out. Everything that I do trickles down. Everything that I do is a ripple effect of the identity piece. Okay. So, I used to think back at different times where I wasn't working on this or I wasn't as bought in on identity work, or when my mindset wasn't as strong as it is right now when it comes to my own identity. And how this manifests is a lack of belief. It manifests as scarcity, right? When you have a limited view of yourself, when you doubt yourself, when you don't believe that you have what it takes, or you look at what somebody else is doing and assume that you could only do a fraction of that, or you assume somebody's better than you because of this or that or the other, that is going to affect, obviously, everything that you do from there, right? It all starts in your mind. Everything you create and everything that has been created all starts in your mind. So when I work on viewing myself as bigger, right? I said my word for 2025 is big. So the big focus has been like, how can I view myself as bigger? What is the biggest version of me? What are her standards? How does she show up? What are her goals? How is she worthy of big? How is she deserving of big? When I play a bigger game and I work on stretching my capacity in terms of goal setting, in terms of actions, in terms of my own self-belief, what I've noticed again is not only it's reflected back to me in so many different ways, but again, it infiltrates every move and decision that I make moving forward. Okay. So like a very easy example is, let's say you're going into New Year, or I'll use like an example of mine. Let's say I'm going into New Year. Let's go back to like the first year in business, it was like negative. It was like a negative 5K. The second year was 190. Okay. So 2018, negative revenue. 2019, we made $190,000 in revenue. So going into 2020, my viewpoint of myself and what I'm here to create was very limited. And that's fine, right? I was a new business. I barely kind of figured out what I was doing. But instead of going into the year thinking like, I'm going to blast off, like this is my year to, hit 7 figures or multi 7 figures or whatever. Like I figured out how to do this. I can absolutely 10x it. Instead of that, it like that thought never even entered my mind because my mindset was so limited because I was thinking so linearly. So my viewpoint instead was like, wow, we made $190,000. What is logical for this year? What will I allow myself to believe is possible, thus go for? And I don't know what goal I set for myself, but I know it wasn't more than $500,000. It was probably $200,000 and we did 290. So we overshot it, which is beautiful. But I wonder if I had done identity work, and I was, but like, I think the more you grow, the more emboldened you get. And it doesn't have to be, right? I did this in a very linear fashion, quite frankly. And different periods, I was more emboldened than others. But that's my point. Like going into this year, there is no limit. Like I'm going for a 10x goal, which doesn't even make sense. Literally doesn't even make sense on paper. Like if I were to tell you what I was doing, or like a financial advisor, and they were to look at my numbers, they'd be like, have you bumped your little head? Are you okay? That's what I'm going for because I've worked so much on the identity, because I know I can do it. And because I know it's only a matter of time. And because I know I have everything that it takes to make that happen. And why not me? It's happened for other people. Why not me? Right? So that level of belief in oneself, that level of identity ownership, I guess, or perspective, identity perspective, however you want to call it, like the own view of self is unstoppable. And I just know so many people, myself included, limit themselves without even realizing, right? They're like, well, what's realistic? What's linear? But also, what am I willing to allow myself to go for so that my ego is protected, so I don't look stupid, so I don't whatever. That's all identity stuff. All of it is. So I just realized, and I've seen this enough over the years, which is why my word of the year is big, is the bigger that I play and the more that I continue to stretch my capacity and the more that I work on my own self-belief and everything that comes in that, and the more that I work on the limitations that come up and the blocks that come up, this infiltrates into the coaches that I hire or don't hire. This goes into the team that I put around me, the offers that I create, the pricing, not letting circumstance dictate who I am and who I'm becoming. That's another big piece of identity work, right? It's so easy when things are good to think that you're a badass. That's the easiest thing to do. Anybody can feel like a badass when the cards are stacked in your favor. Duh. But who are you when the sales aren't flowing? Who are you when the client's check is bouncing? Who are you when the person ghosts you? Who are you when they're attacking you on the internet? Or when so-and-so says that they don't believe in you? Or whatever, right? Like, you either believe you're a badass, period, or you only believe it depending on the circumstance. And let me tell you something about circumstances. They are always changing. About 50-50. You're going to get 50% opportunities to feel like a badass, and then 50% of opportunities to question everything and think that you're crap. If you let those circumstances dictate how you feel about yourself. So the goal is to drink your Kool-Aid so much and to work on this to where you literally become bulletproof in the best way. Delulu, right? I'm a badass because I am. I'm worthy of that goal because I am, because I'm a child of God, because Melian later says, because I was born worthy and nothing has changed. Like whatever the thing is, that's what that means. That means no matter what you say about me, no matter what my bank account says about me, no matter what anything is happening around me, I choose to lead. I choose to still play a big game. I choose to show up in this way because I've got me, because I know the power of myself. And the more that you can get to a point where you are unwavering in that way, you are literally unstoppable, and you will move through the quote hard times faster than anybody else. And what begins to happen is you start to build your confidence. You start to see, oh, okay, I know how to surf, right? Like no matter what the tide's doing, I could fall off the board 100 times. I will always get back up on that board. I will always catch a wave. Always, always, always. That builds confidence. That builds resiliency. That is staying power. And that, my love, attracts some serious results. But results based on how big you're playing. Play a bigger game, get bigger results. Okay. So anyway, that's it for today. Next week is the ideal client episode. Because like I said, everybody submitted questions related to ideal clients, or half of them were. So that was cool. But by the end of next week's episode, you will walk away knowing how to be a match for the dream client who is probably watching you right now. She is minutes away from pulling the trigger. You just got to be a match to her. You got to play a big game to attract the big whale. So next week, we're going to get all up in that. All right. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you then. Bye.